Hey,
Hey,
hey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ihsan Hines from MBKCares. Welcome to season 3, episode number 3 of MBKCares Wellness Wednesday. As many of you have been following along, we started this discussion about mental health, particularly dealing with Black men's mental health last April at the early stages of the pandemic and in the waking time of civil unrest that was starting to hit our country. So we continue the discussion tonight. We had two special guests along with the host and MBK Cares Executive Board Member Eric Marsh. We have Tommy Blackwell. We also have Salaah Muhammad. Eric Marsh is going to continue this introduction and take us into the discussion for Wellness Wednesday. Welcome, Eric.
thank you, Ihsan. I appreciate you, bro. And welcome everybody that's watching. Again, Ihsan has said, my name is Eric Marsh Sr., and I'm a board member of the MBK Cares organization, where we focus on well-being of the Black community, specifically Black men's healing from violence, oppression, suicide prevention, and bullying prevention. Tonight, we have our guests, Salaah Muhammad and Thomas Blackwell, who are going to be joining us to talk a little bit about the climate that we're all dealing with right now, particularly regarding the Derek Chauvin trial and the most recent police-involved shooting that just took the young lady's life. But more importantly, how are we dealing with it? How are we dealing with it emotionally? How are we dealing with it psychologically? And how are we dealing with it from a socio-political perspective? What are the steps that we need to take to mitigate this damage to our community? So first, I want to have our guests introduce themselves, and I want to start with Brother Salaah. Salaah, how you doing, bro?
Thank you. I'm complicated, a mixed bag of emotions to be quite honest. But first and foremost, I just want to thank y'all for this space because I see this similar conversation taking shape all over social media, and it doesn't provide the platform to be able to dive into those feelings. And so I think this is incredibly important for a lot of folks that are tuning in, but also just for folks who also have a mixed bag of emotions right now. But introduction. My name is Salah Muhammad. My God, what do I do? I host Salah's Corner podcast where we connect with individuals, activists, educators in the community to strengthen those community relationships and connect it to the civic engagement. I am also the founder of a nonprofit coalition for community empowerment, promoting and encouraging civic engagement to youth and disenfranchised communities. I'm also a field organizer with Color of Change. So on all three areas of my work, the work is really dedicated to promoting a stronger sense of community, particularly with Black folks, and in hopes of encouraging more involvement, so we can get some sense of some of these issues that we're faced with and tackle them together. So thank you for just having this space. I appreciate this.
Well, no, thank you for being here, particularly because of that laundry list of things and activities that you're involved in. You're amongst family with that. I think we all have a lot on our plate. And speaking of a brother with a lot on his plate, he I was going to sound real corny, but he also fills the plates of his community as well. I want to pass that off to Tommy Blackwell. Tommy, how you doing, bro?
Hey everybody, thanks for having me on. I really, appreciate what you fellas are doing. These are much needed conversations to be had. So first and foremost, my name is Thomas Blackwell. I am the founder of the Blackwell Culture Alliance, along with my co-founder, my wife, Asajj Purple Blackwell, who I have to give an honor to because she keeps me straight. I am also the vice president of the Neighborhood Association Subcommittee. I am also the chief operating officer of PQRadio1.com. At Blackwell Culture, our mission is simply to create a better quality of life through volunteerism, education, and donating. I also want to take note that I am a member of the PAN family, which is Philadelphia Anti-Drug, Anti-Violence Network, where our mission is simply to stop gun violence. So, kudos to all of the advocates over there and everybody in the streets, all the crisis teams, and everybody, whether collectively or individually, trying to make a difference in what's going on in the city of Philadelphia and around this nation. Gun violence is a big problem right now, and I think it's going to take all efforts. It's going to take a million boots on the ground. This is going to take a collective effort for us to get a handle on, for us to get some programs and some jobs and some things open for our youth who are just out here creating chaos. So my work is just based around that. As far as the putting food on people's plates, I have to attribute that to my grandparents and my father, the Honorable Lucian E. and Janie Blackwell, and my father, Thomas Blackwell, the fourth former state representative. I was raised that no one should go to bed hungry at night. And in West Philadelphia, especially West Philadelphia, food disparity is a very big problem. We have two supermarkets. Prices at those supermarkets are sky high, and we have a lot of people, who, experience poverty, who suffer from poverty, who just cannot afford.
Hey, Tommy, your signal's breaking up a little bit, but I wanted to acknowledge what you shared about the work that you guys are doing in that community, and also share the fact that, Philadelphia being the largest, poorest city in the country, there are communities all across the city that could really utilize that kind of work. So I really, one, just appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of West Philadelphia and your organizations, but also in honoring the work that had come before you, but also encourage folks to reach out and to connect with Blackwell Cultural Alliance and others who are around the city, and continue to develop this mutual aid network so that all of our communities can eat and have what they need as a result of this struggle that we're all going through. But back to the other aspect of this struggle, in relation to the current climate that we're dealing with, and I almost hate to use the phrase current climate, right? Because this climate has been going on forever. Like, it's not a new situation that we're dealing with. The difference is that it is in our face all the time, 24/7. I'd like to talk to you guys about where you are personally and what you have seen in your community around the Derek Chauvin trial, and how are people navigating that? How are you navigating that personally, and what are you seeing in the communities? Salaah, I want to go with you first.
Yeah, interestingly enough, so I hold weekly calls with Philly residents, organizing calls, and ironically, our the one we just had was last night, so it was a few hours after the trial, and we took some time to just hold space for folks in Philly to just share their initial thoughts and just feelings, and a lot of folks mentioned how they were shocked that the guilty on all three counts came down. I was kind of shocked as well. I don't know if I invested a lot of thought into, what I expected, but I know I just didn't expect that. And so the fast turnaround just really, made me, when I saw that they were already ready to announce, I knew that it was going to be a guilty. But I'm also, there's this other side of me of like, I am happy that the family got some sense of accountability, and some sense, I don't know if I would call it closure. I don't want to frame it for the family of George Floyd, right? But I know that there was something there that really that was an end to a story for that family.
Mhm.
But as an abolitionist, as a prison as abolitionist, as someone who constantly thinks about like how we look at accountability, what measures as accountability, what measures as whether it's be police reform, criminal justice reform, prison abolitionists. Um, you know, I don't know if this is a moment to celebrate or if this is a moment or a step on a path towards that abolition work, right? And so I'm left with more questions honestly than answers to some of this, because at the end of the day, I think prisons, this is my personal opinion, I think prisons are wholeheartedly just terrible. They offer no form of real rehabilitation. They offer no form of real accountability. It's really just meant to it's designed, to me at least, as a system of punishment. And so as a society, I hope this is, I hope that the supporters of the police, the supporters of the current system that we have, when they see that they too are being held accountable, that they start seeing the prison system as not a just system to hold really anyone accountable. But also, start having conversations on what real change, structural change starts to look like, where we are preventing these incidents from happening, but also accountability starts to take a different shape at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I want to point out something. I'm gonna go to Tommy next, but I want to point out something. It's spoken like a true activist and abolitionist. We didn't really get into your feelings about it, right? You talked about making space for the community. You talked about abolishing, so I'm gonna come back to you on that, because I want to know, you as a man, what your feelings are. But let's go to Tommy. Tommy, right now, what have you seen and heard, and how have you personally navigated all of the emotions around what we've seen over the last several weeks around this trial?
That's a great question. I mean, what I've seen is, nothing different from, what happened the night George Floyd was unfortunately murdered. People are, still up in arms, about it, because we see this happen all the time. It's not just George Floyd. We are still dealing with, Breonna Taylor's death and so many others. We just lost another young lady. Right after this verdict comes out, a white police officer shoots and kills a 15-year-old girl in Ohio. These things, we are in a capitalistic society. That's what we live in. So, putting people in prison in this country is big business. I don't think it's in this country's best interest to stop locking people up. As far as how I feel about it, I'll piggyback on what the gentleman said. I am happy somewhat that the family could get some type of justice. But I don't think it was enough. I don't think it's fair. There was not just one police officer. There were 4 police officers who were holding Mr. Floyd down. Those other 3 officers also need to be brought to justice. Cops seem to have some form of immunity in this country, where they are allowed to shoot first, and the questions can be asked later. We also live in a country where a police officer who is trained, in maybe some combative tactics, and trained mentally on how to handle themselves on the streets. We live in a country where a police officer is allowed to be nervous, is allowed to be afraid for their lives, even though they're the ones carrying 25 pounds of whatever that is around their waist and bulletproof vests. They have access to back up whenever that cause goes through. They are allowed to be afraid in fear of their lives, and regular everyday civilians are not.
Mhm.
We are asked questions like, why are you so nervous? Or, why are you moving around so much? Why are you so fidgety? Well, you only walked up to my car with a gun.
Mhm.
And then seeing people who look like me die at the hands of police officers, it's unsettling. You know what I mean? So there was nothing really to be happy about. I
Mhm.
found it appalling that police officers would come to my community to protect businesses and not the people.
Mhm.
We hear gunshots every night. There are people dying every night.
Mhm.
These kids are dying at an alarming rate every night. And we get police presence for businesses and not our not the people in our community.
Tell us a little bit of give us an example. What are you saying when you saw police protecting businesses for those folks that don't live out in West or didn't see what you saw? What did that look like?
Well, I mean, one, it's crazy. I mean, there was a stabbing directly across the street from where I live, and I didn't see that many police show up that call, but it almost seemed like the entire city's police department was posted in West Philly to make sure, that none of the looting started happening again, that that people basically didn't tear down the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. But I would like the same type of response, when people are shooting, when you have senior citizens and children who can't walk down a street in fear of a stray bullet flying and hitting someone. It's just not right. It's just not right to see a police officer standing in front of a building knowing that business is not almost, but seems more important than human lives. That does not sit well with me.
All right, so let's dig into that a little bit more. And again, I want to be mindful, right? Because what we're doing here, I'm not trying to re-traumatize or re-trigger anybody, right? But I really want us as Black men to get into defining the feeling that we're talking about, right? Because it's important for us to have that that real conversation about the feelings, because what then that does is once you're able to define that feeling, that then allows you to act on it a little bit differently. So I'm going to go back to Salaah and talk about.
Eric, one second. I want to chime in on that actually about the feelings too. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
So I don't know what people particularly experience even watching the verdict, but there was like a high level of anxiety even as we prepare for this show. We knew that it was likely to be a verdict read by Wednesday while we were planning the show to air on Wednesday. Had this been tonight, we would be like really like minutes after the verdict, right? So while watching the verdict, there was a feeling actually of like sorrow for Derek Chauvin. Like I felt bad that a human, even though he killed George Floyd and everything, there was something that triggered, like it made me feel sad. And then I felt bad that I felt sad. I felt bad inside, like, yo, why are you feeling bad for somebody who just killed a Black man? And I didn't like that feeling. So then I wrestled with that all night. And I was like, yo, am I selling out by feeling sad about something like that? But I think Tommy addressed something like, and even Salaah, there's no correction in things. So it's still like, and then also I've done things in life where I've gotten grace or mercy, whether that be from God or from people, where I feel like change needs to happen, not just somebody taking the bullet for it, but change needs to happen, right? And then as I process stuff all night, this is where I got sad. I got sad that we ran one lap. By him going to jail, that's one lap. But this is a race. This is a marathon. And what I felt like they gave us yesterday with this verdict was not just like some real form of justice. It was like a stimulus. When they gave out those stimulus checks last year, it was like, here's this $1,200. Y'all go over there and be quiet. Here, go take this $1,200, even though you need a year's worth of income in order to recover from last year, or maybe 2 incomes, because some families lost 2 working jobs, right? But it's like, take this $1,200 and go over there and be quiet. We lost Brianna last year. Ahmaud Arbery died. There was the guy who went out and shot people during the protest. There's no accountability. Like, we don't even know what happened to the guy in the Wendy's parking lot who died. Like, there's so many stories of like people dying at the hands of either vigilante white men or of the hands of police, but they gave us one. And what I feel like they gave us this one wasn't just because of justice. I felt like it was to protect the economy, because this country could not afford to allow that man to go not guilty, because things would have burned. And I feel like they allowed him to take this bullet for the sake of the country having peace and to make us feel like we got a stimulus verdict. And the sentencing is key, because if this man only gets like 10 years, is there real justice? You know, because in that state of Minnesota, they go off the highest charge. So it was a 40-year charge. There was a 20-year charge. No, there was 25 and a 10, 75 years total. He doesn't get all of those. They take the highest one, which is the 40. And then in that state, historically, there's only been 10 to 15 years served. So there's likely that this man's going to get 10 to 15. And who knows if there's some backhand deal where he can go to some prison where he's not in general population. And he's kind of like offset just to keep the country quiet. Because I didn't see anything in that man that looked startled at all. He walked out like he didn't even blink. He took that, like, if I would have gotten those sentences, God forbid, I'm crying as soon as the letter G comes out. I'm crying. This man took that on the chin, like he didn't blink. I think that he knows he's going to be all right.
So what does that mean? What does that mean? Salaah, tell us, again, there's a lot to unpack with what Ihsan just shared, but what's the first thing that jumps out to you based on what you've heard?
To answer your question about how I'm feeling, which also ties into the first thing that I think of about what Ihsan said, is I'm feeling frustrated. Because, this is not, this ain't enough. Quite honestly, this is not enough to speak for all of the other injustices that we see to Black people, to Black men, to Black women, to Black trans folks, right? This is just, it's not enough. I know, Ihsan mentioned the 10 years, possibly 10 to 15 years. That ain't enough, and honestly, one of the things that I've been thinking about, I've been having these discussions around, what the sentencing can possibly look like. To me, quite frankly, that's, my focus has been closer to, okay, well, what's going to happen to prevent this from another person? Because I know no matter if he gets 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20, 40 years, right? We know that form of accountability is not a path to dissuade the next officer, the next person from killing somebody else. And on top of that, I like to reframe it from the sense of like, they gave us this win or they gave us the stimulus check. We fought for a year for this. We fought, and it was long, and it was hard, and it was frustrating, and it was tiring, and it was emotional. And there were days where it was just like, I can't, I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. I'm nervous about what tomorrow is going to look like. I'm nervous about what next week is going to look like, but we kept going forward, and we fought for this win, not just with folks, for the folks and family in Minneapolis, but in protests in everywhere, all over the country, all over the world. But yeah, so it's important to frame it as we made waves to get this result. But that can't be the end goal. The end goal isn't, just making sure that this case went to a guilty, right? The end goal is a entire structural change in our criminal justice system or our criminal punishment system. And the frustrated part of me is we're not having, in a lot of circles, we aren't having that conversation. It's the conversation does in a lot of ways shift to, we got the guilty, how many years he's going to serve in prison, y'all better not let this happen again. And it's like, no, I'm past y'all better not let this happen again. We need to really start having conversations around this system is just flawed. It is not doing what we expect it to do. The only thing that it is doing is punishing folks. It's putting perpetrators of a crime against the state and against the federal government, right? And not centering victims who are affected and impacted, and communities who are impacted by these crimes, and it's not making the perpetrators whole. And so I'm frustrated because there's just never, we're not having enough conversation I feel that's leading to a path of large structural change. And we are only having these conversations on a case by case basis, right? We saw this as the jury was deliberating, as they were doing, closing remarks. We had this case interrupted by another shooting in Minnesota. We had it interrupted again by this army veteran being pepper sprayed by a police officer. Now, just I think it was a few days before, it was, there was another news story about, the kids being accosted in Perth Amboy in New Jersey. They got harassed by police because they were riding their bicycles through a neighborhood and they didn't have a registration for their bicycles. They got arrested and their bicycles taken. It's stories like that don't always make national attention, but we know it happens. And so the fight was a years long protest and fight. The fight was constantly calling our elected officials and, pushing for this trial to be as public as possible. It was video footage and watching it repeatedly, being traumatized, watching George Floyd die over and over and over again. That was stuff that we took and we endured to get just this guilty plea. And so for all of these other situations, right? Like, they're not always documented in that same way. And so the frustration goes back to, is that what we have to do to just get some accountability in a case by case basis? What does it take to drastically change this whole system?
Drastically change it. Tommy, before we go to you, I want to point out something that just kind of leaps out to me in both of your statements, right? In two very different situations, when you have a system that only 7 police officers have actually been charged with a crime in the past 20 years of police involved shootings, only 7. When we talk about them getting locked up and them being serving time, and we talk about how they are likely to get the minimum sentence, and then we look at Black men, brown men, poor men all across the country getting locked up and getting maximum sentence. And both camps of supporters for those people talk about how the system, the prison system, doesn't solve anything. By locking people up, it's not restoring people. It's not restoring what was taken away. It's not rehabilitating people. And so I think it's a fascinating conversation, and this is something we can get into a little bit later about even both sides, the one who the system treats the most leniently with just a slap on the wrist, and the side where it's most punitive and most damaging. Both agree that the prison system doesn't work and it doesn't do anything to restore justice. Tommy, I want to go to you and tell me what your feelings are, your thoughts are right now after what you've heard.
I mean, you have to, when you talk about the system, when you talk about how America works, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Police were not created to necessarily treat Black and brown people as equals. They were created to chase us down, to help keep us in chains. Like earlier when I alluded to, they have some, they don't have to be held accountable because their procedures and policies are made to protect them. They aren't made to protect civilians, especially especially Black and brown people. When you talk about this country, I always say that there are 2 documents that I feel need to be revised or just torn apart and maybe rewritten.
Mhm.
The United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence did not include Black and brown people as equals.
Mhm.
So that's where it starts. Remember, our cops, our lawyers, our judges, they all swear an oath to a document that was designed to keep us in chains. Now, I don't care whether you're white or Black. I don't care whether you're Chinese, Russian. I don't care what you are. When you swear an oath to that Constitution, you're swearing an oath to documents that were written by slave owners, that were written by people who basically stole land, and we don't get into that. I will just go ahead and say it. I was not excited when Barack Obama was elected president. Yes, we made history, but in this country, we only make the history that they allow us to make.
So let me jump in here, Tommy, real quick, because I want to push back a little bit on some of what you're sharing and get you to dig a little deeper. Because one, again, we're not talking about you and your feelings, right? We're in a history lesson, right? And so I want to keep it present. I want to stay present, but also thinking about then if the Constitution is something that's so horrible, then what about the amendments that have been ratified to actually protect and include Black and brown people? So 14th, 15th, 16th Amendment, the things that we are able to use now in courts of law that we weren't able to use back then. So are they just completely waste of time as well?
Throw us a bone and we take it. We have become comfortable with what they've given us. I mean, we can push reform. We can push reform all day long. But if we're just pushing reform and reform isn't actually happening, then what good is it? We can be happy that, there's legislation now in the state of Pennsylvania that, if you are a convicted felon, if you stay out of trouble for 10 years, then your record can be expunged or sealed. But we're talking 10 years. What about those brothers who are formerly incarcerated coming out onto the street who need jobs now? Some are on probation, and one of the agreements that they make is to get a job, to pay whatever restoration fees they have, or just to, stay busy. And of course, we know there aren't, a million felon-friendly employers out here. So, brothers resort to going back into the streets.
So what do we do? What do we do? Because I want to kind of move into like more solution oriented. I know you don't have a lot of time, right? But so where we are right now, Salaah just mentioned the fact that, it's not a bone, it's not a gift. We just spent a year fighting and the system reacted to that fighting and that protest, right? So what do we do now in order to affect real change in your perspective, right? Besides going to DC and burning the Constitution, right? Because that's not going to do anything. You got copies of that. But besides actually physically destroying the Constitution, what are some of the solutions that you recommend or some next steps that you suggest?
I mean, well, right. This is what I would suggest. I mean, people have to be more involved. We all have to be more involved in what is going on in our neighborhoods. Yes, they've taken programs out, but that doesn't limit us from being creative to implement programs. Block captains can get together with their communities and come up with some things for kids to that are preventatives, taking preventative measures so that some of these children aren't thinking about picking up weapons, or they don't put themselves in predicaments of where they have to face jail time. I think that things like parenting classes are important. I think that getting involved and staying involved are things that we can do. It just all revolves around us as a people being involved in the process. I know that it takes things take time. I understand that. So we have to keep having these conversations. We have to keep, basically keep our foot on the gas, with these types of conversations and not letting up. We have to call our elected officials. We have to hold them accountable for the things that are happening. Well, I'll say this, kudos to those politicians, that are making things happen. But, in areas where things aren't turning around, we still have to hold them accountable for those things. But while we're holding them accountable, we also have to hold ourselves accountable. Most of our elected officials don't live in our neighborhoods. They don't live where we are. And I've heard you say this before, Eric, we have to meet them where they are. That is the responsibility of us, of people like me, civilians. That is our responsibility. We have to stay more involved. We have to come up with more ways to change the system, more productive ways to change the system, not just a bunch of rambling on what we wish we could do, what we want to happen, but some things that are sufficient, things that work for both sides. We have to put rehabilitation back into prisons. If they're going to privatize prisons, they have to start rehabilitating.
All right. Well, Tommy, look, you just set up a great segue for us to talk about color of change, Salaah, and what the work that he's doing around that. And then we're going to come back to you if you're able to stay with us. I know it's coming up on 7, but I want to come back to you and let's talk about those solutions and next steps, because you mentioned a lot about elected officials and holding them accountable. I want to talk about how we then become the elected officials, right? How do we start that pathway, right? Similar to your grandfather and your grandmother and that lineage that you come from. Let's talk about those solution-oriented arc that we want our communities to be on. But Salaah, having heard what you just heard, right? We went from burning the Constitution to getting more involved in our communities, right? And holding elected officials accountable. What are some things that you can add to that? And tell us a little bit how that overlaps with the work that you do.
That all of it overlaps, honestly. So, I started my organization, Coalition for Community Empowerment, to be an organization based in Philly that strengthens community. Being connected with younger generations, I know that how we get engaged with them, how we inspire them, talk to them needs to be different. Traditionally, when we talk to folks and we tell them they got to get involved because they got to vote, they got to do all of this and that because so many of our ancestors fought for it. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't connect with a lot of folks because they don't know how it directly impacts their life. Their biggest concern is getting a dollar and finding food to put on their table. So these community organizations, the work that I'm starting to do with this organization, I found it is to create those relationships, is to invest in those community members. Before I go out there and tell you what you need to do, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be an ear for you. I'm going to be there to support you. I'm going to create events so we can be in community with each other. Coming up, actually, May 10th, we're doing a free drive-in movie theater at the Navy Yard, just to bring the community out, just to encourage folks to be within community with each other because we've been inside for a year and it's time to, be socially, physically distant, but, hopefully we can be in some type of community. The work that I do with Color of Change speaks to that as well. Like I mentioned earlier, we do weekly meetings where we hold similar spaces like this every Tuesday. But we also I have to be careful of, some of the things that I say because there's different types, there's different, filings and organizations that we fall under. But, our activity is focused on uplifting the voices of our members and addressing the issues that they care about, all while centering Black joy. That's our motto. It's Black joy in everything that we do. That's one of our strongest values. And so that's done through in-person events. That's done through virtual events on Zoom since the pandemic. We've done a lot of things like just this past since last October, we've probably given out over 20,000 PPE kits. That's mask, gloves, and hand sanitizer, just to make sure that the community is supplied and they're safe. We also have another side of the organization where we focus on a lot more of the political engagement, where we've endorsed candidates. We've created forums to talk about some of these issues on how it connects to the political, and what it means to be involved in this political system. That goes such a long way, but I can't have the conversations on the political until I've created the relationship with you first, until we've been in community with each other first. So you can, to be quite frank, so you'll listen to me. And nobody's going to be willing to listen to me if I'm just telling them all day and all night, vote, vote, vote. It sounds good, but it doesn't land, right? Who are you to tell me to vote? However, we've been in community with each other. Before I got on this call, I just was having one-on-ones with our members across Philadelphia, talking to you. How you feeling? How's it going? What's new with you? How can I be a support system for you? Let's talk about some things that you care about before I tell you what's important or what I think is important or how you can get involved. We're doing a lot of work with this upcoming primary election that unfortunately I can't share here. But folks, if you're interested, definitely can connect with me one-on-one about that.
Salaah, how can people connect with you in order to get involved with the type of work you're doing?
The best way, I give this out freely, is folks to call me. You can call me, text me. I can shout. I'll drop it in the Facebook here. That's one of the best ways for folks to connect with me. I keep my phone by my hip. I make my calendar open to schedule time with folks across Philly. We're always looking to just continue to build coalitions with folks, to create stronger communities, so we can strengthen the bonds of making those changes that we all agree needs to happen.
Is there a social media way that they can follow you or connect with you as well, besides the phone?
Absolutely. I have a number of platforms. So the podcast is Salah's Corner. The nonprofit is Philly Coalition. That's on all social media. Salah's Corner on social media, Philly Coalition on all social media. And we just have our main color of change page. So I don't run that. That's somebody from our social media team.
Okay. Eric, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How are you feeling about what's going
on? Thank you for that question. I put up a post yesterday about all of this that's going on. And I was saying that I'm wondering if other communities, both around the country and around the world, understand the level of stress, trauma, and anxiety that Black America feels every time these situations come up, right? And so for me, something that comes to mind is the issue of what's called ACEs. And ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a research study that was done many, many years ago by an African-American woman physician and counselor who talked about all the things that build up from our childhood to our adulthood that impact our well-being. All the little microaggressions and the traumas and the stresses that we experience all have an impact on our lifespan, our expected lifespan, and our health, right? And so these trials add to that trauma and stress. The verdicts, whether they come through what we consider good or bad, add to that. The videos, the news, talking about it, trying to avoid it, the fact that you have to go out of your way to avoid some of these stories, all of those things add to stress and trauma. I'm wondering what it would even be, what it would look like to be Black and to be trauma-free, right? And so for me, it's really just about, like, where can we be Black? Where can we be free and not have to constantly struggle with these issues and push and pull with this tension, this duality. It's ironic. I'm looking out my window and a police car just drives down the street, and it's not a neutral feeling that I have when I see that. And what is that like? Does anybody else in the world know that feeling? I'm sure there are, but I think that the challenge, as Tommy was alluding to earlier, is that we exist in a system that has historically, traditionally, legally and financially, economically, and on all levels, devalued Black bodies. And that, Salaah, to what you said about that year-long fight for this, in a way, it's like, yes, it's great. I admire, like, it's a little victory, but a year-long fight for this, like, I'm tired. And so the reality is we've got to figure out how to address this on multiple fronts, on multiple levels. Like, we can't just approach this politically. We can't just approach this economically. We can't just approach this violently, as much as you might want to tear up something, right? There are things that we need to do strategically to start planning and start working on these things. And I feel like that there is ground that can be made. There are things that we can do as Black men. And I'm just going to say that, just as Black men. I'm not talking about for all the community. I'm not talking about for Black women and children. I'm saying just as Black men, there are things that we can do collectively and individually to kind of move the bar, move us closer to a more just and equitable system. And here's the other thing. We need to learn from our past, because none of this is new. And so if none of this is new, why do we keep repeating the same thing over and over again, right? Somebody told me one time that was the definition of insanity, to do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. So we need to figure out the next chess move to make a different move so that the outcome next time is different in some kind of way. And understand that we're in a long haul. Like, this is the last thing I want to say about this is when Tommy, you were talking earlier, the picture that came to mind was a cable under tension, something under tension, right? If you remember when we were kids, we used to have to play Tug of War, right? The only way you could lose in Tug of War was to not pull hard enough. So I say that, I use that analogy to say that the other side is always pulling. There's no opportunity for us to let up. There's no opportunity to relax, because as soon as we relax, we lose ground. And so that's what it's like to be under a constant state of tension and to be constantly pulled in another direction. So that's the way I feel about it. Ihsan, what about you?
So I was about to say something before I transition to Tommy.
No, I just wanted to double back and share a little bit more. So part of my work with Color Change, I don't just work actually in Philadelphia. My work actually expands to like Wisconsin, and actually, ironically enough, when we were having this conversation, also in Minnesota. And so right now, in Minnesota, actually, before I say that, I do want to say, just as Black men, when we talk about our space in this work. And even though it's important to recognize the trauma that we have, it's also important to recognize and be there for our Black queens, and our Black trans community as well. And there's something that's shaping out, around this latest murder of Ma'Khia Bryant that is just not the same support that we've seen for others. Folks are criminalizing her, having a knife and being gunned down by a police officer. And I just wanted to make sure I named that, because as Black men, we have to make sure that we continuously show up for, one, she was a little girl. So let's be real. She was a 16-year-old girl. And it's important that we constantly show up for her, because there's just no justification for a police officer pulling up on a 16-year-old girl and gunning her down. But also going back to what I was going to say related to Minnesota, there's actually, in Minneapolis, they just recently passed, and now it's going to be a ballot measure that's going to eliminate the police department in Minneapolis that's going to institute a public safety department that focuses on responding to the safety needs of the public rather than the police responding to the needs of the public. And so there is a drastic a shift that's currently happening right now. It's slated to be on the ballot measure in November election in Minneapolis, and I think it's a great model to how cities and municipalities can move forward into restructuring their police departments so we can start having those conversations on what does this look like to be, like you said, Eric, trauma free, right? Not have that constant trauma just weighing us down. I that's something to kind of look forward to as Minneapolis goes into their election in November, and see what ends up happening if it does pass, if they start moving towards a public safety department instead of a police department.
So
Excellent.
Tommy has to. Tommy, how many more minutes do you have before you have to leave us?
Actually, I have to get off. We're about to go into debrief.
Okay.
But I just want to leave everybody with this.
And make sure you share your contact before you go. I know you might be on a roll, but make sure you let people know how to contact you as well.
Yes, well, of course, you can all reach me through social media. It's at Tommy Blackwell _ on Instagram and Twitter, and my name is Tommy Blackwell, Roman numeral 6. So shout out to my dad because I'm the 6th generation Thomas Blackwell. You can also reach me on there, but I can also be reached at Thomas Blackwell vi@gmail.com. And I am a servant of God. And one of our charged missions from God is to be there for each other. Of course, it's not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for your brother and your sister. So I want people to get more involved in what goes on in their communities. Because we talk about so many traumatizing things, so many violent things, so many of our teens being murdered that it overshadows, those things that are happening in our communities that are good. We have a young African-American queen who was just awarded over $1 million, to basically go to any college that she wants to. Of course, she picked Spelman. And a young king who was just awarded over $100,000 in scholarships to go to a college of his choice. Those types of things are being overshadowed by all the bad. And, we have to create more opportunity for our children. We have to create our seniors. One of the reasons we give out food, of course, is because, food deserts are just, we have to do away with food deserts, and we have to do away with high priced foods and, people not having access to food. But another reason that I do it is because when we are giving out food on Saturdays, which we do every Saturday on 52nd and Locust Streets, 5148 Locust Street, right in front of Big G's Chicken Shack, located in West Philly. When we give away food, we are also disrupting. There are a lot of things that go on that strip, and we want to be out there to put some love back into it, to put some positive vibes into the air. And we as a people should be able to do that for each other without wanting something in return. So I need people to be actively involved in what's going on in your neighborhoods. Parents, check your kids' rooms. Make sure they aren't hiding any weapons or anything that you don't deem safe for your house. Know their friends. Know where they're going. We have to stay involved. Being involved is the key. We cannot sit idle and allow these things to keep happening. So get involved, stay involved, be it, you're volunteering, whether you're donating, or whether you're educating, on gun violence, whether you're educating, it doesn't matter. As long as you're putting positive vibes into the air, we can get through this. And like Eric said, as we continue to have conversations, about, results. We come up with solutions and we get results from those solutions, then we'll be fine as a people going forward. But the killing has to stop, be it by cop or by our own hands. It has to stop. We are losing too many innocent lives. We're losing brilliant people who haven't even had the chance to share their brilliance with the world. That's what saddens me about it all. So just stay involved. Again, you can reach me at Tommy Blackwell _ on social media. Email me at thomasblackwellvi@gmail.com. Or you can call, my wife is going to kill me because I didn't say the phone number. Or you can call 484-775-0772. And of course, I have to plug PQRadio1.com.
Yeah.
And our partners, WHYY and the NICE program. Let me tell you something about NICE. NICE is doing something that is revolutionary in my book, because they are talking about things that people aren't talking about. Now people are getting real news. So I got to shout out Mr. Eric Marsh for being influential in making that happen. And of course, I cannot forget Purple Queen, who was always out there making it happen, and everybody else. So kudos to you, Mr. Marsh. I thank all three of you gentlemen for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I'm definitely looking forward to being a part of the solution, and volunteering for all three of you gentlemen to come together and to show that unity, to show that, we can unify, we can unite, and we can unite for a positive cause. We can unite for our people and get things done at the end of the day. So I really want to thank you guys, but I don't want to get in trouble now.
Tommy, just give me, I know you got to go, give me 1 minute, man.
Sure.
Like you and Salaah and even Eric, one of the things I find really relevant about a like theme with y'all is that you're content creators and you're able to tell the story of the news. Salaah has his podcast, you have your radio station, your wife has her platform, and Eric has his. You're able to tell the story from your perspective as a community member, as a Black man. And one thing I love about you, and a lot of people may not know this, you have the answers, and you're also responsible for a song called No Question, or a group called No Question. So it's amazing to me that you wound up with all the solutions and all the answers.
Well, you know what? I don't talk about it much, and I guess that I should. No Question taught me a lot when it comes to how to treat people and just how to be a decent human being. I know a lot of music artists, they don't get a fair shake because of all of the hoopla that comes along with the. But it really taught me how to be accepting of people who are not like me.
Yes.
Accepting to people who have strong opinions, who might not like me, and still be able to have a productive conversation, basically to be able to agree, disagree with a lot of people.
Let that elevator go, man. I think.
Oh, no. I let it go. It's actually going up.
Gotcha.
But No Question taught me, and I actually on the wrong floor. But no question, it just taught me a lot about people, man, and the love that people, I've witnessed the love that people actually have for each other. Music is a universal language. So, it doesn't matter what color you are, we can all get together and sing something that makes us feel good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So why not take that approach with everyday life? We all come together and we create safe spaces for our children. We create safe spaces for each other, and we can live, laugh, and love in harmony.
Yeah.
And just grow together, man. That's the key to this life. We all have to grow, in such ways where we're not putting each other in danger, and we're not risking each other's lives, man. So yes, No Question was a big part of my life. And I thank you for mentioning that, Ihsan.
Tommy, we go back, man. Our families are connected, man. Like we're extended family. And I admire how you've grown. I admire how you've grown like more into the community and just walking in the shoes of the legacy your family has left, but also creating your own nook. And I really love how Eric described the tug of war. I really admire how you, Salaah, and other brothers out there, there's plenty of people in our community who are doing the work. You all have committed to, even if you've fallen down, because you've fallen down last year. I mean, I don't want to traumatize things. People may not know your story. You went through something last year in public sight, in the view of the public with the police, and you're pulling back at that rope though. And I really love that. So like you've fallen, and we've all fallen in ways in our lives, not just with the police. But I like how you've bounced back. You're still here. So that speaks to your resiliency and the manhood and the God working in your life. So I appreciate you for being here. And thank you. And also thank you, Purple. I know you lent them to us tonight, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you, brothers, man. I really look up to you, brothers, and just continue doing the work, man. And I'm here for all three of you if ever you need me.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Have a
you,
peaceful
bro.
night, bro.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You the same. Thanks.
Thank you. Salaah.
What's going on, man?
Yo, how are you feeling right now, man? You feel encouraged by this conversation?
I am. I'm feeling very encouraged. I think this is well, one, I miss doing these panels. We started doing them last summer. When protests first kicked off. And so I'm in my element right now. To be honest, because I don't, the interestingly thing enough. I'm in this work and I'm doing a bunch of this work, but I don't talk about it as much. And so it's good to be able to just share some of the insights and things that we have going on and just kind of talk about perspective. Usually it's a space, Eric called me out on it. The activist community organizer in me is always just creating the space for others to be able to share. And so thank you for just, open that up for me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You and I connected a little over 2 years ago, around 2 years ago, when you brought me on Salaah's Corner and you interviewed me, and I've been grateful. I mentioned this to you earlier. As time has gone on, and I've had opportunities to do Wellness Wednesday with Eric over the last year and do other interviews on other platforms, I'm eternally grateful that you gave me that start. I had experience doing acting and plays and stuff, but you gave me the opportunity to sit down and tell my story in a way. And it really, something that I don't take for granted. It's something I respect about how you've grown in your craft, and also in your humility and your reach. Like, you're now reaching people all across the nation with something that I remember meeting you at Reform, not Reform.
It was at Uncle Bobby's.
No,
I saw you giving out a flyer and I walked up to you.
Yeah, that was our initial contact. But I mean, as far as the platform you were using, you were at the studio down in North Philly. I forget the name.
Rec Philly.
Rec Philly. But your platform is now grown where you have your own podcast on another level. And I just really admire growth. I admire resiliency, and I admire people who are just constantly walking and working. So I appreciate you for bringing that to the table. Eric, is there anything you wanted to ask of Salaah, or anything you wanted to add as we close out?
I have a million things I want to ask Salaah, but I honestly just want to, just have him share with us what are some of your wellness practices. What are some of your coping mechanisms that help you as a Black man who has to dialogue about these things, has to think about these things and work on these issues on a regular basis? What do you do for self-care, and what do you recommend that the folks out there who are viewing this, and Ihsan and I, pick up and start implementing for our own well-being?
Appreciate that. That's a good question, actually, and that's not something I've always thought about. But as I've continued to do this work, I've thought about it a lot more. One of the things that I practice on every call that we get on is a check-in, temperature check, or just a joy check-in. How folks feeling? Let's center us in the room together with one another, just to make sure that we actually have, even though we are meeting, even though we're talking about some of these issues, we actually have the capacity to be able to maintain that conversation. Or if there's just, this might be a little too heavy today, or I can't get into it, or I live on Zoom right now, so I can't turn on the camera right now because sometimes that's just too much.
Mm.
Um, the other side of that is my wife. Being able to just like shut down everything and just there are days where I'm on nonstop Zoom calls until about 9 p.m.
Hmm.
And sometimes for me, the self care is just in between calls, if it's a few minutes, if it's a half hour, running into the other room and just, being an annoying pest to her, quite honestly. Um, but just having someone to center me and be my joyous and set my most animated and just extra self as much as possible with and falling full into it. That is truly a blessing, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. And then finally, sometimes it's just like I don't have capacity. Just saying, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't have capacity. I might have capacity at X date or X time, but right now I'm just, I might be watching TV, playing video games. I might not have the capacity to respond right away, but unfortunately, just owning up to the fact that you don't have capacity, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because quite honestly, this is a lot. This is a lot to deal with. Both what happens in via social media, whether it's another traumatizing event or what's shared on the news, or just the day-to-day work. Having these discussions is very taxing, and so just admitting that I don't have capacity is enough to just say I need a break, and I'm going to take it until I do have capacity.
Yeah, learning when to say no.
Yeah, that's something I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Um, I still got a lot that I juggle, but
Well, we're,
I,
we're
I own
grateful.
up to that.
We're grateful that you didn't say no for tonight. So thank you.
I listen. When Ihsan and when Eric, y'all need me to pull up. I make sure that I have the capacity and the ability to do so, and I needed it, honestly. This is a conversation that was really needed, not just for me, but for other folks, and hopefully we can have more of these.
Absolutely, absolutely. We listen. Anytime you want to turn the tables, invite us on the podcast. I don't know about Ihsan because he sleep most of the days, but that's because the brother works at night. But no, just honestly, we would love to just continue this conversation with you. And I've got something in the works regarding a podcast that I may be picking your brain on, but it's still under wraps right now. So.
Well, the world we're all about to know in a moment, but my I'm always open to help out. The one thing about me is I love being a supporter of folks, of their dreams, of their passions, of their creativity. And so however I can support, and definitely have y'all come on. I'm ready. I'm about to, after we done this, I'm about to start asking y'all what's your schedule so I can book y'all in the next episode, because
Hey, bro.
I'm always looking for guests. Right now I'm trying to get I'm talking to Malcolm Kenyatta to get him to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for y'all next.
Hey, have you had brother, what is his name, Mark Lamont Hill on yet?
I haven't. He's busy actually. He's very, very busy. I would love to actually have him on. I actually helped him do because he has his own podcast, Coffee and Books, and he had some equipment issues that I was trying to help him out with. But no, I would love to have him on the
I would like to
podcast.
see that happen. Like that's where you and I connected at his coffee shop.
It
But
is.
I was watching a podcast clip that he did this week when he was talking about the world doesn't see black babies or something like that. I don't know if that was from his podcast, but it was a clip on social media, and I found him to be so interesting. He spoke at my younger brother's graduation years ago, and he went to Temple, I believe. He's from ENS as well, but he's just such an interesting, wise man. And I just would love to see him on your podcast. So I don't know if speaking that right now starts any type of energy, but I hope so. One thing I want to acknowledge that you talked about when you talked about choosing your no or knowing you have it, that right there is the power that wellness brings about. It's being aware that you have options in this life, because even when you do like suicide thoughts, or addictive behavior, or even when we're talking about criminal justice, if somebody chooses to respond a certain way, that could be by not having a level of self-control. So wellness helps you to be able to practice self-control so that you can say, you know what, in this moment, my brother's life is not worth taking, or my enemy's life, whoever it is not worth taking. I have the choice to walk away from this circumstance, or I have the choice to not pick up this substance right now. So learning that you have the opportunity to say no is key on all levels of mental wellness. And I really love that you mentioned that, because that's a key for life. Just knowing you have a choice. Like, you don't have to just accept life as it happens to you. You can choose how you respond to it. Because if we talked about so many things that just happen, unfortunately, being a Black man in America, we do have a choice in how we respond to it. We can't hold ourselves responsible for everything that does happen to us, but we are responsible for our reaction to it, how we respond and how we react. And those are the only things that we have. So, or those are very important things that we do have. One thing that I've found helpful for me is like not saying the first thing that comes to my mind sometimes, because as a person who likes to say yes, I will say yes to something and find myself sacrificing sleep, sacrificing my time, sacrificing time from my family, things that if I just took time to say I'll get back to you on, when it comes to even scheduling, you'll find yourself in a more stable, controlled environment, or just in a more peaceful circumstance. So I thank you for bringing that up. I also would like to encourage our viewing audience out there to take advantage of some of the resources that are available. There are so many resources available through AFSP, which I sit on the board for now with co-chair Tia Jones. We sit on the board for the I always get this mixed up, but the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for AFSP. And that's to bring resources to the community, particularly the minority community, people of color, the LGBTQ community as well, to make sure that the people who are dealing with mistreatment or bullying or poor mental health don't have to go through the fights internally of dark places without having resources to make sure that suicide does not happen. Then we also have our own organization, MBK Cares. We have so many programs that people don't know about. We're more than just this podcast. We're more than just this Wellness Wednesday. We have so many programs that we haven't even executed yet, because when we became a nonprofit, the country shut down, the world shut down. But please be aware and keep us in prayer that we have so many things in store to help young people learn how to play chess so that they can work on their thinking skills and planning. We have programs to teach people golf so they can work on etiquette and just being in moments before they move in particular ways. Programs to help with the integration of people into different communities, whether there be gentrification going on, or citizens coming home from prison, returned citizens. Just programs that help the community survive in ways that are peaceful, in harmony, and in mental wellness. So please take advantage of the resources that are already in place, but also please keep us in prayer. And then we also need your support. We need volunteers. We could always use financial donations so that we can continue the programming, and that we can also even expand our reach. So thank you, Salaah, for being here. Starting to get tongue tied right now, but I appreciate you for being here. Thank you for choosing to give us some of your time. Thank you, Bree. Shout out to your wife. And one last thing before I go, because this is true for even Eric too. One thing that I think was key for you and also Tommy, and I know it to be true for Eric and myself, you talked about your wife, Tommy talked about his wife, and also the legacy of his family, his father, his grandparents. Family helps us stay centered. Eric being a father, me being a father, those are the things that help us to have our why. When we struggle to say, what should I do? We still have our why. When I feel like I can't hold on, there's a why. And I say that to the public out there also. Find your why, and that'll make it easier to do your what. It'll also just help you to appreciate the voices who don't matter, or appreciate the voices who do matter and to ignore the ones who don't. Okay? So appreciate everyone out there for tuning into another edition of Wellness Wednesday. Eric, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share?
Not at all. You guys summed it up, and I really feel like just ending it on a positive note, ending this conversation on a positive note, It's what we try to do with every conversation, right? And understanding the whole purpose being here is really about promoting well-being. And we want you to remain safe and well, and whatever we can do to support that and increase the well-being in individuals and our collective community, we're here to do. So if any of you need to reach out to us or want to have a further conversation or dialogue, or just need help in some kind of way, feel free to reach out and contact us at mbkcares@gmail.com, and we'd love to connect with you. So,
Salaah, can you give us your resources one more time, your social media resources, and any other way people can contact you?
Absolutely. Folks can always, I have a lot of emails, but the email I dropped on the Facebook is my podcast email, which is realtalk@salahscorner.com. I dropped my cell phone number in there as well, which is 267-615-8085. Folks can visit the podcast on all social media at Salah's Corner. Also the nonprofit organization Philly Coalition on all social media. Also, I dropped the link in the chat. We're doing a free community drive-in movie night May 10th. We'll be watching the movie Do the Right Thing. It'll be a free event for folks to be able to pull up. It don't matter how many people you got. Well, it's I think the limit is 6 actually, but there's a 6 limit. Don't pull up with no U-Haul trucks with folks trying to watch the movie. But it's a free event. It's May 10th. For the community. It's really just meant to just bring folks out, be outside, be in community with each other, physically distant, but just trying to strengthen those relationships we have.
Make sure you get me that content once you create a flyer or whatever you have so I can get that circulating. I know the week of May 5th, we're going to have Black Men Hill on here joining us for the discussion. And I would like to be able to make sure people transition from that discussion into supporting what you have going on. Thank you for being here for us tonight, brother. I invite everyone to please follow us on mbkcares.com for our website. Follow us on social media, all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and did I miss one? Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All of these platforms at MBKCares. Please keep us in your thoughts and your prayers. And I pray that everyone out there is taking care of your mental health. If that means getting some sleep, if that means going for a walk, if that means journaling, if that means therapy, if that means taking medication when necessary, do what you have to do to take care of you so that you can be a better resource for yourself, but also for the people who are in close proximity to you. And if we're all taking care of ourselves, eventually we'll change our families, we'll change our block, we'll change our city, we'll change our state, we'll change our world. I skipped country in there, didn't I? But I just hope that we all just take care of the parts of us that we have some input into, all right? And that goes for all of us. And keep this in mind before we go. We are not experts. We're just people who have experiences, and we're trying to share our experience with hope that the things that we are learning, we're all able to share and grow and take into account, hey, that may be a choice that I could take, or that may be a path that I can do something differently, so that we're not practicing insanity. Eric, Salaah, myself, Tommy, none of us claim to be experts. We just know that some streets we walk down, we stumble, and we want to warn other people to not go down that street. Or some streets we walk down, we've seen good fruit, and we want to let people know you can go down that block and you may see the same type of fruit. So I appreciate everyone out there for tuning into another episode of Wellness Wednesday. Join us next Wednesday, April the 28th, where we'll continue the conversation. We'll have special guests on. The theme will not be discussed tonight, but it's promising to be something special. All right. Thank you all. Have a peaceful night and continue to take care of your wellness.
All right. Good night, everyone.